All right, it's time to get started. So welcome to a live stream. This is a live stream for DGST 101. My name is Zach Whalen, and I'm a professor here at the University of Mary Washington, live streaming for my summer class, DGST 101. Good to see 5 viewers. Hey, all right. So today I'm going to be talking about... okay, great. Actually, so I just saw Sonia's comment there. I was replying to your comment in Discord a moment ago, and I was going to show you something you could try instead of having to uninstall WinZip. But if you did that already, great. What I was going to suggest, I have set up here. Still working through this cough. And that if you can download the zip, and you see it right here. I know it's tiny, but if you see this zip, like a folder with a zipper on it, or you might see like a WinZip icon or something like that. That's the compressed folder or archive, and sometimes if you just right click on it, you can see an option that lets you bypass whatever software is set up on your computer. So in my case, I have several different compressor extractor tools here, but I still always see this basic option that just says extract all, and that's actually all you need. So if you see extract all, you can always just click that button and then do the extraction right in place, and that works fine. I also have this thing like open with 7-zip and other things, but I don't know where WinZip shows up for you, but if you do see the extract all option, that's just going to be Windows itself extracting it, and that's fine. That should work fine for what you need to do. Your goal then is going to be to get a folder like this one, which will have Fiji in it, and then when you double click the Fiji folder, you'll see this. And this is a regular folder. This isn't a compressed folder. I can tell because I have the ribbon of options across the top, and I see the files here like ImageJ win64.exe. Double clicking that opens ImageJ, which is this little thing here. That's what it looks like when you get that done. And now if you can get that far, then I would say go check my video from yesterday. I put in the timestamps so you can click on them on YouTube and jump to different parts of it. And I demonstrated this part of, like the part of actually opening something with ImageJ fairly early on in that video yesterday. So check that out. Okay, great. So let me turn off the music. So I have a bunch of things to talk about today. I'm pretty excited about it. So let me do some turning things back on my OBS setup here. That's weird. Why isn't that? Hang on, it's not grabbing the right window. There it goes. Okay, so then let's crossfade into this view. Okay, great. So here I am. And today I'm going to be talking about creating the web page from scratch, and that's part of this week's project. The first part is doing some investigative work like I showed you yesterday, using a tool like ImageJ or IMJ or Voyant tools or Kumu. I didn't show you Kumu, but that's another tool you could use this week. That's the networking tool. And the point is to separate the investigation, which you've done with one of those, with the sharing. And today I'm going to talk about the sharing, how you're going to get this across. And I'm going to review the assignment instructions to show you what I expect for this and what I'm going to show you how to do today. Excuse me. This is the HTML and CSS part of it. All right, so going down here, this is the part that I'm going to be talking about today, which is designing it for the web and building a web page. And I'm talking about building a web page from scratch here. So I'll say this now, and I will say it again probably. This project does not involve WordPress. If you're working in a WordPress dashboard at any point in this project, you are in the wrong place. You should not work with WordPress on this. I'm going to show you a different way to put things online, and that difference is important. And so that's what I expect you to do as well. So this is the things that I expect in this. It's essentially a short essay. It's, short essay. And it's going to have several components. These 5 components should have a title. There should be some text in several paragraphs, not one single long paragraph, but several paragraphs. You should have some images. Those images might be the results of your analysis, like the barcode, or it might be a screenshot of the media that you're analyzing. There should be some links to things, and there should be some related resources and sources related to your work. So essentially a short essay. And on the notes for today, I have a link to one example of this from a former student. Let me go down to today's notes, week 4, day 3. At least I'm pretty sure I do. Yeah, so there's an assignment here by Elsa from a couple summers ago, and it's she was analyzing lyrics and lyrics by the Beatles. And so she has a picture of the Beatles here, some paragraphs describing what she did, and then some visualizations, in this case created by Voyant Tools. There's a bit more about each of these individual songs. She looked at different, I think she was approaching it album by album. So looking at one album versus the other, comparing their word clouds basically, and embedding samples, and really thorough work here. So this is really good. And this is kind of what I would suggest you kind of aspire to. I mean, I think this was excellent work. So, you know, do your best, I guess, and try to do something like this. It doesn't have to be quite as elaborate, of course. It doesn't have to be quite as, you know, deep. But this is the idea as far as creating a web page. So this is a web page, you'll notice. This is not a WordPress post. This is not a WordPress page. This is an HTML web page that Elsa coded by hand. Like, she typed in the code to produce the website that I'm looking at here. And that's the part that you've been learning about a bit, hopefully, with Codecademy or W3 Schools. And I'm going to show you some more today. All right, so that's the idea. That's what we're doing here today. We are we are building a website from scratch, right? Okay, so in order to do this, I have several tips and some things that'll help you. If you make these decisions early on, they will help you later. And so I'm going to give you several tips right away at first. And tip number one is use Chrome or Firefox for this project as you're working on this project. I do not recommend Edge or Safari. If you're on a Mac, you might be using Safari just by default because that's your default browser, but I do not recommend that. It will confuse you later on. And in other words, Safari is a fine piece of software. It does what it says it's going to do. But there's one really key design decision that was made at some point in the evolution of Safari as a browser that will make it harder for you to complete this project if that's how you're working on it. So I really recommend working with Chrome. The thing that's different is, if you take a look at the address bar up here, this is elsabaumgartner.com, sharing.elsabaumgartner.com, and you can see the full file name here, sds-project.html. You need to know the full name of files that you're looking at and the full location of those files, and Safari for some reason has decided to hide that from you when you view it on the web. I don't know why. It just shows you the domain name and nothing else, and that makes it harder for you as a user of Safari to understand how information and documents are organized on a website. You are going to have to organize information and documents on your website, and so if Safari is hiding that information from you, you're going to have to fight against that and overcome that and try to understand it without being able to see it. And I feel like that's just unnecessary. So use Chrome if you have it, use Firefox if you have it. Both Chrome and Firefox also have some nice development tools. Safari does too, actually, but I know how to use them already in Chrome and Firefox, so that's what I'm going to show you how to do. And you know, it's just a better kind of browser to work with. After this, you can go back to using Safari all the time, but for now, you'll have a better time if you use Chrome or Firefox. Okay, another tip is, this is not even a tip, and it's also not number 3, it's number 2. I don't know why that's got the wrong number there, but you are going to need to use UMW Domains for this. I know at least one of you is using WordPress.com for your blog. Others might be as well. You cannot use this. You cannot use that for this project. You need to use UMW Domains for this project. I'm going to show you how to use UMW Domains for this project. I'm not going to show you how to do it somewhere else because, first of all, you can't do it on WordPress.com, and any other site that you find that you can edit HTML on, you're on your own to figure that out. I don't even know what to suggest for that. But UMW Domains, definitely it will work. You definitely should use UMW Domains for this project. So that's not even a tip, it's a requirement, really. Okay, then tip number 2. I don't know why they're out of order. This is more of just a recommendation, which is to have your computer display file name extensions. Also, your file manager in your website, I will also recommend having it show file name extensions. I'll show you that in a moment. But that's a way to understand how files are different and what software is going to use those files and display those files or whatever. The file extensions can be quite important. I just thought of another tip. So I'm going to, I'm doing this thing with these labels up here to help me find the timestamps later, and so I can remember which, when I go back in after the fact and put in the timestamps, it'll help me find different segments of things that I'm talking about. But let me just make a small change that I just thought of. So. Hold on. adding a step. Okay. I'm have a more complicated layout on my computer than normal today. Okay, that's the step. That's not what I want to do first. First, we are going to create a subdomain. Okay, so that's where we are. I'm in the right place now. So, hope this all makes sense so far. As always, I encourage you to ask questions as I'm talking. You can put it in the chat, or you can, like the Twitch chat or the live stream chat on Discord, and of course, troubleshooting the channel in Discord. And I'll put this video online afterward with the timestamps for different topics. Okay, so to do this project, I really recommend you create a subdomain. Elsa did that here. You can see her subdomain was sharing.elsabaumgartner.com. I recommend you do this as well, and I'm going to show you how to do that. Many of you did this already when you first installed WordPress. You created a subdomain, you installed WordPress in that subdomain, and you've been blogging there ever since. Some of you decided not to do that. That's okay. But you all really should do that now. You're going to be creating a web page within your website. It makes sense to kind of create a fenced-in sort of area for it, and that's what a subdomain gives you, and it's easy, so let's do that. So I'm actually going to show you a couple ways. So this is my UMW Domains dashboard. Yours looks a little simpler than mine because I just have a ton of sites on mine. But I'm actually going to be working today on my Reclaim Hosting dashboard, which is very similar but slightly different. So I wanted to show you the UMW Domains one first. To log into your UMW Domains dashboard, maybe you do this already to get to your blog, but you can go. The easiest way is to type in umw.domains and then log in. You log in with your NetID, your normal credentials that you would use to access Canvas or email or Banner, and you'll get to this at first maybe, and then what you want is the control panel. So you can get there by going to Manage Account Control Panel. For some reason, you still see this sign in message even after you're signed in. Sometimes I don't know why. I mean, I kind of know why, but it's not that important as long as you can find the control panel. And once you get to the control panel, that's where you get all the tools and the things that you will need to work on your site. All right, so this is where you probably installed WordPress. And now that you've installed WordPress, maybe you don't ever come back here anymore. Maybe you go straight to WordPress. That's fine. But there is a separation that you should keep in mind. Your website is a platform on which you can install WordPress or Drupal or MediaWiki or Grav or Anchor or Omeka or other systems. And you can also just hand code your own content, which is what we're going to be doing today. So a lot of people have a hard time sort of distinguishing like WordPress versus my website, and your website is a thing which can contain multitudes, including WordPress. WordPress is software, kind of like you have to install Microsoft Word on your computer if you want to edit a Word document, or Adobe Acrobat to read a PDF. WordPress is content management for your website, and you have to install it. It's software. You have a computer, which is your web server, and you've installed the software WordPress on it to create a blog. You didn't have to do that. You could have installed something else, or you could have just done it by hand. And today we're going to be doing it by hand. So that's why making a subdomain gives you that room to do that. So here's how you create a subdomain. You from the control panel, you find the subdomains area of your control panel, and it's in this area called domains, and it says subdomains here. Click on that, and this is where you create a subdomain. Like I said, I'm going to actually do this over on this control panel today, but it looks basically the same when you're at the starting point here, right? So subdomains. This will let me create a subdomain on zachwhalen.net. Basically, that's just where zachwhalen.net is hosted. Okay, so I'm going to call my subdomain. I'll just sort of pretend I'm making a project about Fifth Element. So I'm going to call it Fifth Element, not Firth Element. That'd be good. Like, what if you did like I almost typed it Firth Element. That would be like you could do a deep fake and put Colin Firth in place of Bruce Willis. That would be funny. Okay, Fifth Element, and it's fifth dash element. I don't love that. I don't love the hyphen there, but yeah, we'll do that. You can do a number, but I don't like doing numbers if I can avoid it. So I'm just doing like fifth element like it's one word, and that'll be good enough. Okay, now I need to pick which domain this goes on. Notice I don't type anything else in the subdomain field. I don't put like a period or anything else, just the straightforward thing that this project is. And no spaces allowed, no underscores allowed either, just letters, numbers, and hyphens. So let's see if I can find my top level domain. There it is. So this is going to make a subdomain called fifthtelement.zachwhalen.net. Okay, so notice I haven't changed any other settings here. I just named it and I picked the domain for that to live on, and then the document root it filled in automatically. So I'll just hit create and wait a few seconds for it to create that. My cough was doing so much better today. I was hardly coughing at all before I started streaming. Now I can't stop. Okay, so this is what you should see once you've created a subdomain. I've got a ton of subdomains, obviously. You might have a handful already, but they should all look like this. There should be the name of it on the left column. There should be a document root, which is automatically created. Don't worry about what it says. Redirection should say not redirected, and then you've got some tools here to remove it or manage redirection. Don't use either of those. Okay, so what has happened here is the document root is the location of the contents of the subdomain in your web server. And you can access the contents of your web server using a tool called the File Manager. The easiest way to get to your subdomain's location in the File Manager is to click on the link here in the subdomain list. Click on the document root link here. And I'll show you that once I find the one I just created. Looks like I don't know how many, so I'll set this to display more and scroll down to find it. Okay, so here it is. So here's the name of the subdomain I just created, and here's the document root location. Notice, by the way, I have not browsed to this to see what it looks like on the web yet. I'm not on the web yet. I'm just in the back end of my server still. So I'll click on this link to go to the File Manager. And now that I'm here, I can start working with the website. But let me first explain what we're looking at here. This is the File Manager. And like the name suggests, this is where you manage files. And files are the things that are, it's software, it's documents, it's things that are visible on your website, as well as a lot of other things that are necessary to create the thing that you see when you navigate the website. So one thing I do recommend in here is to change your settings to display hidden files and folders, and also file extensions. And you can access that up here in the top right where it says settings. This is something similar that you should do on your home computer, but I like to see it on the web version as well. And there's this little checkbox that says show hidden files, and then this one, I don't know, this one doesn't make that much difference, honestly. The disable character encoding verification dialogues. I mean, I don't ever need that, but so I have it disabled, but I don't know, it doesn't really hurt to see it either. But the main thing I do recommend is show the hidden files. If you don't want to, honestly, that's not going to make the biggest difference in the world, but it sometimes is nice to see what's there. So you'll see a folder here called wellknown.wellknown. I don't even know what that's something that cPanel creates automatically. You don't need to deal with it. It doesn't do anything. It just sits there. So don't worry about it. What we're seeing though, other than that, is a blank folder. There's no contents here. If you click around, so the left is kind of like a tree view of all the files on your server, and I have a ton here. Obviously, this is a site and sub developments. I mean, the content here that I've got is goes back 15 years of projects and things basically. So I've got a lot here. I'll show you just a few things because just to show you how this works. When you click on a folder here on the left, you will expand and see the contents of this folder. You'll see it expand on the left view right here, and then a little bit farther over you'll be able to actually interact with it. This is the set of files and folders that create the new version of my website that I'm working on, and it's uses the software called Grav. Very different structure on the back end from WordPress, but I can see those files and folders here that create my website using Grav. My website that is running on WordPress is in a slightly different location. It's over here in public HTML. Wait, where is it? Is it in here? Maybe it's in here. There it is. Okay, so this is what WordPress looks like if you log into it and you look at it from the file manager view. These are all the files, all the PHP files that create that interface and all of the the graphic stuff that you interact with when you create your content using WordPress. That's all software. The source code for that software is right here, and it just runs. The nice thing about PHP is that you can see the source of it. So all the stuff that WordPress does, you can see the code that makes it do that, and if you want, you can change it. I don't recommend that, but you can, and you can make it look totally different or do totally different things. Again, you really need to know what you're doing before you do that, but it's all here in case you do. Okay, so there's a lot more you can do with the file manager, but you don't need to do a lot. I just wanted to give you a sense of just how to move around it, right? So at this point, I'm in a place I don't need to be, and so I need to jump back to where I want to be, which is in that subdomain I created a minute ago called fithelement.zachwhalen, and I can see it right here, kind of right next to my head. So if I click on that, this takes me back to that blank folder. And now this is a place where I can start creating my HTML content. Now I want to show you what it looks like somewhere else first, though, which is what it looks like on the web right now. Because it's going to be useful to have that view of it up and this view of it up. This is the place where I can create the content, but I want to see what that content's actually going to look like as I create it. And I'm going to do that in another tab over here. Okay, so this is, what did I call it? Fifth element.zachwhalen.net. So I'm just typing this into an address bar. And I'm not searching for it. It won't show up on Google yet because this has only existed for a few minutes. Google does index things very quickly, but it hasn't got this yet. I have to actually type in the full name here. I'm going to also type HTTP just to show you. This is on the web, so it starts with http://fithelement.zachwhalen.net. This is the web. And this is what you could see if you typed this in. So if you went to, I mean, you can do this now if you feel like it. Open a web browser and type in the address fithelement.zachwhalen.net, and you'll see this as well. It just says index of, and then there's name, last modified, size, description, nothing else. But this is the view of this subdomain that I just created. All right, so that's what you can see. This is what I can see. And this is where I can create stuff, and this is where you will see it after I create it. All right, so I'm kind of going to be flipping back and forth between these two tabs. When I'm actually working, I usually like to, if I have enough room on my screen, I like to put this view in like full size on the left, and then this view full size on the right, and then that way I can save this one and then refresh this one and see them both at the same time, and that helps me as I'm working on something. But it's kind of hard for me to do that on the stream right now, but that's how I recommend working if you when you get to that step for yourself. Okay, so I know I'm moving through this. If you have any questions as I'm going, again, please feel free to ask. I am going to kind of move through it though, because this is recorded and you can pause and watch it later, right? I mean, normally if this was an in-person class, this is a good point to pause and make sure everyone can get to this step with their subdomain. But I'm going to assume that you've got that at this point and you're ready to move on to actually doing some things with it. So now I'm going to talk about how to actually add and edit an HTML file. If you've been working through Codecademy or W3 Schools, then you've already got a sense of what HTML looks like. And what I'm showing you now is a place to put some actual HTML and actually see it on the web. You know, the thing about Codecademy and W3 Schools is you've got those little try it now editors and things and the quizzes, but those aren't live on the web. Like, it's just sort of, there for you to practice with. But this is real. This is where we can actually do it. Okay, so the interface for the file manager is very simple in a way, and it doesn't give you a lot, but it's enough and it works fine. So what you want to do is click on this up here where it says plus file. One thing that I find kind of hard to remember about the file manager, by the way, is you've got one sort of ribbon way up at the top of options, and then you've got another one that's just below it down there. I can't really point all the way that far over. Yeah, I'm going to lose my finger. But over, and sometimes it's hard to remember which ribbon you're looking for something in. But right now we're looking for just plus file, which is in the very top. So you can do plus file here. And I'm going to call this webpage.html. Notice it ends in .html. Technically, you can also do .htm. I like HTML because that's what it is, the Hypertext Markup Language. That's the full acronym. But, either one's technically fine. So I'm just going to go with create new file here, webpage.html. This is now a blank web page. Well, it's not even that yet. It's just a blank document. I haven't even done anything with it, but I'm about to. So let's see what that looks like here. Remember, like I said, I like to work on something here, flip over here and see what it looks like and see if I can see it. Now, this index of that statement and then the list here, I'll just refresh this here. What's going to happen when you view the subdomain like this is you're going to see a list of all the files and folders in that subdomain. And that's going to happen until we make a change later on. But for now, while you're working, it's a good idea to see what you're working with. And I can see the file that I just created, right? So in this view, I can see that I created it here, and then I'm going to be able to edit it here. But on this view, anyone else, you can see this file in the list, and you can click on the link of the name and see what the file actually looks like. nothing here yet, but that's where it's going to be. Notice that the URL changes up here. So it's no longer fifthtelement.zachwhalen.net. It's now fifthtelement.zachwhalen.net/webpage.html. And this is now the full path to that specific document, whereas this is just the path to the top level of that subdomain. Okay, so let's actually add some content so we can see if it worked. So this is your, the file manager. The nice thing about the file manager is that it includes a built-in code editor. Now, I often will work on a code editor just on my computer and then upload the entire project when I'm done. But for a lot of things, sometimes it's easier to work just straight in the file manager. Like for the site I'm working in right now, I'm mostly just tweaking it at this point. So that's what I'm doing. I'm working through, little things and then just finding the file that I need. Grav, which is the system I'm using, it uses lots and lots of templates and like templates upon templates. And so it's just so many files to navigate. It's easier for me to navigate it all in one place as opposed to having different copies of it. But in this case, we just have the one file, of course. So what we want to do is right click on it. And now you've got a list of options in this menu that pops up. There is one option here that looks tempting, but it is not the right option, surprisingly. So the HTML, you might think, well, this is an HTML file and I'm trying to edit it, so I should use this HTML edit button. Actually, you should not. It's going to create, it's what's called a WYSIWYG editor, and it's kind of weird and funky, so I don't really like it. I don't recommend it. I don't want you to use it. Instead, use that third option, which just says edit. So it's just regular edit, not HTML edit. So click on this, and then this is this is now the code editor, and you can use the same editor to edit any kind of file on your server, but we're going to be editing HTML, and we're going to do it here. Okay, so this is still a blank document. I haven't done anything yet into it, but I'm about to. My goodness. Okay, so let's. I'll make this a little bigger. But this is plain text, so anything that I write here, I have to write in code. I can't like highlight something and make it italic or anything like that. I don't have any kind of editor tools. It's just a basic code-oriented text editor, which means I'm writing plain text code here, and what I need to write is HTML code. This is the same kind of thing you hopefully saw in Codecademy or W3 Schools. This is where you actually do the writing of it. Sorry, I'm switching my window back here in case I need something and I don't. Okay. There we go. So let's write some HTML. So HTML, as you hopefully know a bit about, it's a lot of angle brackets. Like angle brackets are the primary sort of syntactical unit, I guess, that's specific to HTML. But this is an HTML document, so there's a few special tags that we need to start off with and create what we sometimes call the skeleton. And I like to start with the doc type. It's literally just the word doc type, and then HTML. Yeah, doc type I think is supposed to be all caps, although I don't think it really matters. So that's going to create it's going to say this is a document that is of the type HTML, and that just gets us started here. From there, we need to create the sort of surrounding structure. And a key concept to keep in mind with HTML is that we're talking about containment. And so we have a tag that opens and it closes. I'll just give you some generic structure here. You notice that the code editor here actually automatically completes a tag. It gives you both halves of it. This pattern, this syntax, this code pattern that you see here, angle bracket, word, other angle bracket. Am I doing these right? The two angle brackets around a word, that's the beginning. And then the same thing with the // that's the closing. That pattern recurs at almost every layer throughout HTML. So it's something to really kind of ingrain into your mind. Like this is the pattern, this is what you're doing over and over and over again. And anything that's right here where the cursor is said to be contained by or inside of this tag. Anything that's outside of it, or not before the opening or after the closing, is going to be considered outside of it, not contained by it. That's something to keep in mind. So tags have different purposes, and they have different names to indicate which purpose you need to fulfill at that moment. So that right there, I just typed the word tag just as a generic example. Let me make this even bigger and zoom in even. So there we go. Yeah, I want to make sure you can see this. So let's create the basic HTML skeleton first, and then start adding some actual content into it. It takes a while because you have to create the structure before you can actually see any content in it. So the first tag is HTML. And I say first because it's the outermost tag. Everything should be contained by this tag, which is HTML. And it just says everything between here, between lines 2 and 5 is going to be HTML. I can put more lines here, of course, but anything between 2 and whatever the last line of the document is, that's going to be HTML. right? So that's like the sort of grand parentheses that contains everything else within it. And this editor likes to tab indent over. So you notice I just clicked here and I put my cursor there. That actually doesn't matter. It's whatever looks cleanest to you visually. HTML doesn't care about spacing. So if it makes sense for you to put the next level of tag here, that's fine. To me, I like to keep the next level for now over to the left, but it is up to you. The next set of tags is actually two tags that should be siblings to each other. In other words, they are both immediate children of HTML, but they are not containing one another. And that's one called head, it opens and closes. And then the next one should be body, which opens and closes. And I'm putting some blank lines in here, as you can see. I don't need these. There usually should be nothing between the closing body and the closing HTML. There also should be nothing between the closing head and the opening body. So it's like head opens and closes, and then body opens and closes, and that's it. And everything else I'm going to write is either going to be inside of head or inside of body. Okay. So hopefully this is a bit of a review. Hopefully you've seen this a little bit already, but this is still just basic HTML structure. You know, we're not really ready to do much else with this yet, but that's, you know, we can't actually even preview, we can't see anything yet. There's nothing's here yet. Okay. But this is, yeah, I'm actually getting into actual HTML structure and content. So I should switch my slide over here. Okay, so this would be another point where I normally would kind of double check to make sure everyone's on the same page with me, but you know, if not, you can pause and then figure this out, and then I'm going to move on to some actual content here, because I still can't see anything, right? So I'm still editing something here. I can save it, but I can't actually see it. The only way I can see this, by the way, is in a web browser like Chrome. You can actually view the source of any web page, and on a Windows machine, you can get there quickly by typing Control-U or Command-U on a, I think it's actually on a Mac. I think it might be Command-Shift-U. I can't remember. But anyway, this is the source that I just typed. You can see the source of any web page, by the way. So I don't know if you want to see what's going on at umw.edu, which is, you know, obviously a web page. You can do Control-U and see all the things here. There's quite a lot, obviously. This is a robust website with lots of stuff on it, but it's the same language that you're writing. This is HTML. It's just a lot more HTML than what we've got so far, but it's the same kind of thing that I've got. You should recognize, you know, the tags, right? I mean, there is, let me go all the way to the top here. There is the opening head tag, and then the closing head tag. Should be around here somewhere. Boy, they got a ton of stuff here. There it is. There's the closing head tag, and then the body tag opens immediately after that, and then there's all the body stuff. And then the body's tag, I don't know if you can see it there. I'm probably hiding it. Right down on the bottom here, the body tag closes and the HTML tag closes. So everything else, you know, is between those two things, but it's based on the same exact structure that I have here. It's just there's actually a lot of content in it. Okay, so one sort of syntactical thing that's helpful is comments, and that's a way to have something in your code that's actually not going to be rendered as code. HTML has a particular syntax for that if you want something to be considered a comment, and comments can be useful to literally leave comments for yourself. Sometimes you can also use a comment to disable something temporarily in case you want to bring it back later. So in HTML, a comment is the left angle bracket or the less than sign, and then the exclamation point and then two hyphens. This is a comment. And then two hyphens and the greater than sign. So this is a code comment that's not going to be seen like this. You're not going to be able to read on this web page this phrase that I just wrote. This is a comment. So if I go back here, you won't see that. It's just there in the source code, and I can look at it, and there's the source of the code that I just wrote. So, you know, it might be helpful for you to use comments to leave notes to yourself as you work. That's kind of what I like to do. So I'll say this section, the head, is for metadata and other information about this web page. Now this is a rather long comment, and you can see what happened here as I kept typing and went over there to the right. Okay, so yeah, I was wondering if you can wrap lines on this editor. This button might do it. Let's find out. Oh, it did. Okay, good. So wrapping lines is just a way for you to visually see the full line, even though it goes beyond what's visible in the window. And if you see what happened right over my head, it's kind of interesting actually. So line 4 has this phrase, this is a comment. Line 5 has all that, but 5 actually spans across 2 lines visibly, and so line 6 doesn't start until down here. This is kind of a nice touch in the editor. Most editors have this kind of a capability, and so it's nice that this web editor does too. Okay, so the head, as my comment says, is a place where you put things that your web page will need in order to render correctly. The body is where you put the actual content. So I'll put a comment down here to this effect here. Body, where you put the actual content. So let's do some actual content. So I hit Control S out of habit to save that, but you need to actually click the button on this editor. So let's do some actual content so we can finally see something here. So going back to the assignment, one of the things you need is a title. So let's do a title. And I'm going to do that here on line 10. The line doesn't matter as long as it's between the opening and closing body. And so my title is going to be Analyzing Color Palettes, let's do palettes in the 5th element. So I'm going to add some stuff to that, but for now that's the title that I want. So I'm just going to save that and then show you what I need to do to make it actually look like a title. So over here, let me reload that, and you can see there's the phrase I just wrote, Analyzing Color Palettes in the 5th element. It doesn't really look like a title yet, and also semantically, the web browser does not know that that's the title of this page yet. And that is important actually for the website to know what the title of the page is, because it'll tell Google that, and Google will index this according to that title, and it'll render more clearly. It's also going to be easier for someone to parse if they are accessing your website with the help of a screen reader, like software that reads this to them. It'll know that it needs to start with the title, even if the title isn't necessarily the first bit of code that it comes across. So we have a couple things to do to make it both look like a title and also actually signify to the web browser this is the title. And this is how we do it. It's with a tag called h1, so left angle brackets h1. And you notice this editor will automatically give me the second half of the h1 tag. I don't need it there, so I'm going to delete it and then just type it again over here. Sometimes you have to keep track of that. Sometimes it's easy to not realize that it's typed something for you and you have to go back and delete it. I mean, it's just something you have to watch for. So there's no way to turn that off as far as I know. You just have to look for it. All right, so now this is an h1. And the 1 here means most important. It doesn't mean first. It is, I forgot to save it. It is the first because it's the only thing I've written so far, but it's not like when we get into H2, H3, H4, H5, you can go all the way to H6. That's not the order in which those H's appear, those headings appear. This is the level of importance of each heading. So think of it like an outline level. And yeah, so Alban, I see you on there. So you're right, but you need to get that / I mean, I don't know if you typed that before I typed this or not, but you need to make sure you have the / in the closing part, right? So that / is what ends the H1. If you wrote it the way that you typed it in that comment on Twitch just now, you would have 2 headings opening. You would end up with 2 headings, and one would be what you actually wanted to be the heading, and then the second one would be everything else in the document. There's nothing else here yet, but that's what would happen. You'd have like an unclosed tag, and so it would be like a runaway tag that's going to contain everything else. And that can be that's a very common error and a very common and easy thing to fix once you know it. But always, you always want to close off the tags with that / on the second part. Okay, so there's a couple more things I want to do with this to really signify that this is the title. There's also something else going on here, which is that, excuse me, I have in my title a title. I have the 5th element, which is the title of a film. And so typographically, the way to signify that that's a title is to render it in italics, right? It's not rendering in italics right now. So those are 2 things I want to do here. I wanted to do something else to ensure that this gets listed as the title of this document, and I also want to make sure that the 5th element is rendered in italics to make it, looking right. So let me add a couple more things. So this is what I'm going to do first. So notice I'm in the head. I'm not in the body. I'm in the head part of my document here, and I'm going to make a tag called title. And you might have done this already thinking that's how I make a title of something, but in fact the word title here is not going to be content that I see on my web page. It shows up somewhere else. I'm going to say, just to make so you see where it is, I'll say, I'll write this slightly different. The 5th element analysis. I don't know. And saving this here, you'll see where it shows up, hopefully. Maybe close these tabs here so it gives it a better chance of actually being visible, and I kind of gave it away there. But when you refresh the page, you might not be able to see this. It's quite small actually, but the tab now has this title on it, the fifth element analysis. So the content that I wrote here in the title tag on line 7, that's what's going to show up here in the tab on my web browser, or if it's just a single window by itself at the top of that window. That's where the title goes. H1 inside the body is going to be what you actually see here in the web page. So they serve slightly different purposes. Often they should have the same content in them though. It's just you can see one and then the browser will prioritize the other. Okay, and then like I said, there's one more thing. I want to render it so that, I want to have it render the title of the fifth element in italics within that H1. And so H1 is what's called a block element, which means it's going to essentially imply a rectangle around it. But you can also do what are called inline elements, which are going to be in the place they are. And I just use that word element, by the way. Element is the slightly more technical name for what a tag is. And so a tag is how you indicate the presence of an element, and then but the thing that's signified by the tag is the element. It's semantics. Anyway, so here I want the fifth element to show up in italics. So I have actually 2 ways to do this, and I'm going to show you what I prefer, and then I'll show you another way to do it too, which you might come across. Actually, there's 3 ways. There is a tag called cite, C-I-T-E, and that is a way of indicating that I am citing this source, or I am citing this title. This is a title of something. And you notice that that's a signifying statement. Like that's what this is. It tells me what the meaning of that phrase to the fifth element is. It just doesn't mean just the idea of 5 elements. It means the title of that film, the fifth element, when I use the cite tag. That's what I'm really signifying. So I'll show you what that looks like. So reloading that's going to now be rendered in this italic font. And that's maybe good enough, and that's all I want to do. But if you're, this gets into semantics a bit, but sometimes you might want something to be italic and it's not because it's a title of something. You shouldn't use the cite tag in that case. Instead, let's say you wanted it to be, you wanted to say, like, you wanted to show emphasis, like if you wanted to make it sound like you're really upset about something, I don't know, then you might use EM instead. EM is short for emphasis. And there we go. Looks the same on our view of it, but it's going to parse slightly differently semantically. Whether or not that makes a big difference is debatable, but I like using cite. You can also actually use the I, but I is probably the worst of these because I just means make it italic, and it doesn't tell you anything about why it's italic. It does work. I believe it's depreciated though. I believe this is a tag you're not supposed to use anymore, but HTML is a very forgiving language in general, and what's really what actually is forgiving are the companies that make web browsers design them to be fairly flexible and backward compatible. So a lot of times depreciated tags will still work. There's a few that don't for good reasons, but most of the time they will, and that's an example. The ones that don't work are the ones that cause accessibility problems just inherently, like blink and marquee. Okay, so this is what I've got so far. Not a lot, but it's something. And it's hopefully showing you some basics here of the HTML structure. Got about 15 minutes left and a few more HTML things I want to show you because they are important for your project. And the next thing I want to show you and talk about is how to add links to your HTML document. I'm talking about links to other to other websites, to other documents. Okay, so I am going to add another element here, another tag. Let me kind of scroll down. This is getting kind of close to my head, so I don't want to make it hard. I don't want to get in front of it accidentally. I'll add a P tag here. P stands for paragraph, and so I'm adding a paragraph of text here. A paragraph does not have to be multiple sentences long necessarily, just needs to be some text that you want to read. If you want to, while you're developing a website, sometimes it's useful to have placeholder text, like lorem ipsum is a classic example of placeholder text, but I actually recommend writing your essay first somewhere else, like in a Google Doc or a Microsoft Word, and then importing your actual, and then do the website part of it. Like I would recommend doing them separately, and then you'll have some actual content to put into the web page part, and you won't be having to figure out both the HTML and the writing at the same time. You'll kind of do the writing first. But I haven't done that in my case. I'm just coming up with this off the top of my head. So I'm going to write something here. For this project, I analyzed the color palettes and changes to cinematography, did I spell that right? In the film, The Fifth Element, 1997. And notice this is the title again, so I need to use the site tag, which is the inline tag, to indicate what this is. You know, I sometimes don't care for the way that this editor and others will automatically complete a tag for me, but you know, it's fine. So that's a sentence, and let me just double check my work. I always recommend, whatever context you're in, like do a little bit and check if it worked, do a little bit, check if it worked. Little bites like that, because if you make an error, you'll see, you won't have to rewind that far to figure out where you went wrong. Like you'll just see the thing that, you just have the one thing that you did, so you won't have to go all the way back to the beginning and start over again. So little bits at a time is good, little bites. Okay, so like I said, there's an inline tag, but I'm trying to show you how to do links, because links have an important special kind of structure to them. To give myself a little bit more room here to work, I'll say, to complete this analysis, I used a tool called ImageJ. And now I'm going to make this phrase, a tool called ImageJ, into a link. If you've been working in WordPress and any other context, I've been telling you in my videos that I've created, always make sure that you have some text, make it a clickable link to that thing. So if this is ImageJ, let me find, what is that website? Yeah, imagej.net, right? You know, this is the address I want people to go to. It's http://imagej.net/downloads. That's the address that I want people to visit after they learn about ImageJ from my article here. So, you know, some of you have still been doing it, or I mean, hopefully you're kind of training yourself away from this habit, but if you just paste that URL in like that, that's not a good way to do it. I'll show you why. So if you refresh it, so there it is. I mean, there's the URL. I could right click and go to that, or I could, you know, maybe if, you know, it's hard, right? I mean, you have to kind of fidget with it to get to it. We don't have to do that for the web because, you know, the whole purpose of the web is links. So let's make a link. Right, make it so somebody just has to click on a link and then they go to that web page. You know, that's what it's all about. So that's what I want you to do. So whereas before you had like a WYSIWYG tool where you could highlight something and then you get a tool thing pop up and then you can paste the URL in that, we don't have that tool now. We have to do it ourselves, do it the hard way, do the thing that tool was doing for us before, which is actually not as bad as it might seem. So a link is a special tag, a special element called A. A is short for anchor, and you have, of course, the beginning to indicate what part you want to make a link, and then the ending, which is like so. And you know, hopefully you can see, by the way, this editor has these showing up in purple. I wonder if there's a way to change theme. I guess not. But you can hopefully see that the tags are purple. That indicates that it knows that that's a tag, and then the text, the content is black on white. If you're using a different text editor, a different code editor, it might have a different color scheme for syntax highlighting, but it doesn't actually change the code itself. It's just how it's, you know, it's how it's made visible to you. So again, the A tag is structured just like all the other tags we've seen so far. We got an opening A and we got the closing A. We can tell that the closing A is the closing A because it has that / in it. The part that's between that opening and the closing, that's going to be the clickable part of this link. So it's not going to work yet, it's not done, but that's the basic beginning structure of it. So if I refresh that, in fact, yeah, it's not done yet, so that's why it's not a clickable link. It doesn't show up with an underline yet, but it will soon once I've added the rest of it that it needs to actually work. Okay, so the next part of it is going to go in the beginning, and it is the part that Natty Babadi just asked about, which is why is it called href? And href is the name of the attribute we need here. Excuse me. I think it just stands for hypertext reference. H is usually hypertext in the context of the web, and so ref to me seems like it's probably, that's what that means. But it's a way of saying like a location. There are different contexts where you need href, and href is, in all those cases, it's pointing to another related resource, and so href in this case is saying that's where we're going with it. And this is what's called an attribute, and there are plenty of possible attributes, and the attributes always have the same syntax. They always go in the opening part of the tag. So you notice this is the full tag, right? I mean, you got the opening, got the closing, but you only add attributes to the beginning part, which is this part right here. And this is where I'm going to add the href thing. So for attributes, the syntax is, let me zoom in a lot so you can see, oh, it got very big. So the syntax looks like this. It's always going to be the name of the attribute, an equal sign, and then in quote marks the value that you're assigning to that attribute. And that's a generic structure. You'll see it over and over again, depending on whatever attribute it is. Conventionally, you don't put spaces around the equal sign. That's a convention. It's one of those conventions that it will work without that, but it's going to be easier to read if you don't have those spaces. So that's what you should do. And if you look at any other web page, right, like I said with UMW.edu, if you look at the source, you'll see that that's how attributes are written. And as you kind of skim down here, you can see lots and lots of different kinds of attributes, but they all have the same pattern. It's always the name of the attribute, an equal sign, and then in quote marks, the value being assigned to it. You can use single or double quotes. In this case, this is using single quotes. It doesn't actually matter as long as they match each other. Right, here's another one, type equals, and then text JavaScript. Type equals text CSS. You're giving the client, which is the web browser, the information it needs, and a lot of times the information that it needs is, it expects it to be in an attribute, and that's what is the case for a link. So here, in between the quote marks, that's where we need to tell it the destination, the place that we want people to arrive at after they click on this link. And I think I still have it on my clipboard, but just to make sure, I'll go back here. Control C to copy that address. And you notice that when I double clicked on it here, you can see the full URL, HTTPS. If it's an external link like that, it has to start in HTTP or HTTPS, or else it won't work. So I'll paste that here and verify that it works. So you notice that the value shows up here in blue. That's just the way the syntax highlighter is signifying to me that everything is looking good. Let me show you what happens if you miss something, right? So if you, for example, miss the closing quote mark, which is easy to do, you delete that, you notice everything after that is blue too. That's not what it's supposed to look like. That's telling me visually, hey, there's something wrong here. I need to go in and look at that. A lot of times I help students debug things, and that's the first sort of thing I look at is like, does the color make sense? Is the syntax highlighting making sense? And if it's not, then usually you can find the point where it stops making sense, and that's usually where you're missing a comma or a quote mark or something. And that's what it would look like if you do. Or if you're missing this one, it's going to change things that way. So sometimes it does come down to just a little thing, like a little character missing or in the wrong place can have surprisingly disastrous results. But it's always recoverable, right? It's always something we can fix. You're not going to accidentally delete your website by typing the wrong HTML tag. I don't think anyway, that would be extremely unlikely. Okay, so now that I've done that, I can see, I'll zoom in on this a bit. This is the link that I created just now. It's this phrase, a tool called ImageJ, and I can click on this link and visit this website. I can go back to visit the web page I'm working on, and I'm good to go. Okay, so I'm going to add one more feature to this link, and then I'm also going to show you how to deal with images, and then that'll probably be about all I have time for today. So it is common, and I like to have links to external websites open in a new web browser. Sorry, a new browser tab, so that you don't, so like if I'm, you want people to read your essay. So if they're looking at your essay, you don't want them to like go here and then forget how they got here and then they'll never come back to your page. It makes sense to have that open in a new tab and then, to keep this one in its own tab. And I don't know about you, but when I'm doing research or looking for stuff on the web, I usually end up with 30, 40, 50 tabs open as I'm exploring different things. You can open things in a tab yourself. You can choose to do that. But, since that's probably what most people would choose to do here, you can actually code your web page to do that automatically. And I'll show you how. So again, this is another attribute. You have to tell the client, the web browser, how to behave with this link. And that's going to use it's kind of scrolling, getting weird as I type this. I'm actually just going to make this on a new line. It actually, HTML doesn't care if you split attributes on different lines. So this one's called target. It's an attribute, so you see it's turning gold as I type it. Then an equal sign with no spaces around it, and then in quote marks, we're going to put the value that we want to assign to the target attribute. And in that case, it's _blank. This is just a special thing. It's actually a holdover from back when everyone did frame sets for web design, but it still does what we want it to do in this case, which is open in a new tab. So watch, I'm not going to control click. I'm just going to one finger click, and it keeps my original tab open and opens the web page I wanted to go to in another tab. Okay, so that's kind of a nice little touch. Not super necessary, but I like it. All right, so next I want to show you how to add images, because this is pretty important. I really want you to have images in your projects, and there's a couple more concepts that you need in order to do that on your web page. So I'm going to get to that, and that'll finish up today. Tomorrow I'm going to be talking about CSS and designing your web page, but today we're just thinking about content, and images are an important kind of content. So that's what I'm going to show you how to do now. So first of all, we need an image. I don't have any images here. I don't have any images here, but I do need to have images here in order to include them in my web page. So I need to upload an image, and I guess I have a couple I could use. Okay, so this is this is my file manager again. This is where I created the subdomain. I'm looking at the document root for this subdomain, and I've got one file in there so far called webpage.html. So let me upload something here. The upload button is in the top, sort of the gray ribbon, and I can find a file here. I just need to. It's going to pop up a file browser for me, and then I just need to find a file I want to upload, and I'm going to go with this one. This is one of the files I created yesterday. It's a file called trends.png, and that's going to work fine here. Now, a quick note about file names and image formats. For this to work on the web, you're really going to need it to be a PNG, a JPEG, or a GIF. And you need to know which one of those it is, and you need to know that it is one of those three. Images that you get on the web can be different things, but the ones that will work in this case are going to be usually PNG or JPEG is what you're going to need. And you can make sure that it's a PNG or JPEG if you have file extensions visible on your computer. If your computer is hiding file extensions, which they do by default, you won't be able to tell, and you could get confused later on if you have multiple similar file names. But you'll see the full file name in this file manager. You might as well have it showing that way on your own computer. But trends.png, this is one of the files I created yesterday with the Voyant tools, and you'll see it in a moment, but that's what it is. It's just called trends.png. Notice another thing about the way I've named this. There are no spaces in the file name. I really recommend not including any spaces in the file name. If you have them and you've already uploaded it, you can change the name here, but do that before you do anything else. So click into it, like double click on it, I think, or like click once, I don't know, or right click and rename. But really try to avoid file names with spaces in them. They will cause problems, and it's just an annoying thing to deal with. It's easy to the best thing to do, I think, is just to never use spaces, and then you will never need to figure out how to account for URL space encoding, which is, I mean, it's fine, it's doable, but it's just an extra headache that you can avoid if you just never include spaces. Okay, so that's the image, and I can see if that image is uploaded correctly by going back to the top level of my subdomain in the browser view. So remember, this is the public view. This is what you could see if you type this into your address bar right now, fithelement.zachwhalen.net. You would see a list of files. The list of files includes webpage.html and trends.png. You can click on these to view these. I can click on them to edit them, but you can view them, and clicking on trends.png gives me, this is the file that I created the other day, or yesterday. And it's the trends view from, this was Wuthering Heights, I think. So it's, here it is not actually related to the fifth element like my example says, but it doesn't matter. Hopefully this is just me working through this process. Okay, so that's the file, the image, but I'm trying to actually make it so that that image is visible inside of my web page, right? I mean, the other thing besides links that really defines the web is mixing different kinds of content: text, image, audio, video. All those things can be presented at the same time in the same view. That was the real innovation of the web as far as content way back in the 90s. And it still defines what we think of as, I mean, we don't even call it the web at this point anymore, but what we do with computers. We do things with multiple media, multiple modalities at the same time. And we want to do that in the same page here. Also, like, I'm trying to convey something that comes across a lot more clearly with an image. So that's what I'm trying to do here. Okay, so let's do it. So this is going to be, as you might expect, another HTML tag. And I'm going to zoom this in a bit. I'm going to type it right here on line 21 for me. It doesn't matter what line it appears, type it on, really. It's just where it occurs in the document. And this is another tag, obviously, and it's going to be a slightly different kind of tag. Whereas most tags we've seen, actually all the ones we've seen so far, have an opening and a closing part. So it looks like, there's a thing like that, and then there's the same thing again with a / in front of it. Image is a different tag. It does not have that structure. It actually just closes itself. So it just has an opening, and it's got an opening with a / at the end of it to kind of indicate that this is a self-closing opening. There's not another half of it that is coming later. The image tag doesn't contain things. All of the extra stuff that the image tag needs is going to be included in a series of attributes. So you don't need it to be surrounding something else. Okay, so that's that's what the image tag looks like to begin with. That's the beginning of it. And now we have some image attributes that we need to provide in order to make this image actually appear in our web page. And the first and most important one, I guess, is source, SRC, and then an =. Source is what this is an abbreviation for, but SRC is what you type as the attribute. SRC, again, the = with no spaces, and then we need to provide it with the location of an image that we want to load in place here. Now, because this file, trends.png, is in the same directory as this file, webpage.html, the path between these two, in other words, the information that a web browser needs in order to find this one from this one, is simply the file name. If this file was in some other folder or on some other website, it would need a more complicated path. The path is basically the directions that it needs in order to find that. But in this case, it's just the file name, and that's all you need to know, right, about paths. And if that's all you need to know about paths, then you're good. It'll work. It's called a relative path as opposed to absolute. You can do absolute path, but relative is fine. Trends.png, that's the file name. That's the one I have here. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and actually see if this works with nothing else. This actually will work, or it should work. If not, then I have to figure out why, but yeah, it works. So there it is. There's that image. Now, I'm not done actually with the image tag. It needs a few more things, but the basic idea of loading that has been accomplished, so that's good. Okay, so we need a few more things here, so let's add them in here. You can and should also set a width attribute and a height attribute, and I just looked it up. This image is 511 by 282 pixels. So I'll again save the change, see if that makes a difference. And it doesn't, but all that does is it tells the web browser how much room am I going to need for this image, and then it kind of creates that space while the image is loading. This one loads very quickly. I'm on high-speed connection, but if you've ever been like on your phone or something, and you've been trying to look at a web page and it like jumps around while you're loading it, that's because somebody forgot to put the width or height attributes on different images, and as the image loads, it pushes content below it, right? And so if you give it these attributes from the outset, hopefully the browser is going to render it like the shape of the web page first, and then put the content into it. That's the right way to do it. Okay, so let's see here. You can also make these arbitrary values, by the way. You shouldn't, but you can, right? So it's 511 by 282, but if I change that, let's say I forgot that and I typed that wrong, and made that 51, it's going to work, but it looks terrible, so you don't want to do that. Sometimes you might want to tweak something a little bit, but if you give it any numbers that are not the true dimensions of that image, it's going to mess with the aspect ratio, and it's going to distort it either by stretching or compressing something. So usually you just want that to be the actual width and height of something here. All right. If you want to scale it, there are other ways to do it using CSS, but if you're doing width and height this way, then just make it the actual height and width of the actual thing. Okay, one more thing to add here, and that's the alt attribute. So alt is a really important attribute for accessibility, but also for search engine discovery and other things. And like all the attributes, it's the name of the attribute, in this case alt, ALT, =, and then quote marks around the value that you want to assign here. The alt attribute is what appears in case the image does not appear. And there are two ways in which the image might not appear. One is if there's an actual error, like it doesn't load from the server, or maybe you've typed the name wrong or something. The other thing is, what if the person accessing it cannot see? They're going to have some software that's going to read the contents of the web page to them, and most of that software is not going to be able to look at this image and just tell you what it is, like this graph. It's not AI, it just literally reads what's there. So you need to tell it what to see there, like what is there instead of the image. And this is easy enough to do. It's very important, so please do this for any image. I will check to see if you do this. So in this case, this is a line graph showing the trends of 2 words frequencies as they occur. I need to actually see the image again to describe it. And I don't have this isn't, I think purple was love. The purple line spikes segment 3 out of 10. The blue line spikes at, or no, blue spikes there, and the purple kind of, blue line spikes there, purple line spikes at 5. So you notice I'm describing the image. This isn't really a caption. This is not supporting what someone can see. This is standing in place of someone seeing this image. So I'm conveying what the main takeaway that I wanted people to get from this image. So it's a description, not a caption. That is different. Okay, so you don't see the alt attribute. Sometimes some browsers will show you the alt attribute if you hover over an image. This one isn't right now. Let me show you how you might see it. Like, let's say I misspelled the name of the file and I called it rens.png. Then you should see the alt attribute here instead. Yeah, so here's the alt attribute that I just wrote. It's showing up here next to the broken image icon saying that, hey, this image didn't work, but here's what should have been here. And that helps anybody see this. It's not just somebody who is accessing this with a screen reader. It's literally anybody who is accessing this web page will have access to the information now, which is what my goal is. I'm trying to get this information across. Okay, so I'll fix that. And this is probably a good stopping point for today. There's a lot more to show you, obviously, but I'm going to show you some. I'll get you started with CSS at least tomorrow. But in the the language, the terminology of the web, your content is HTML. That's what I spent most of my time on here right now. Your design and layout and everything, that's CSS. That's a different language that sits on top of HTML. And then if you wanted to get anything into anything fancy as far as interaction, JavaScript is for that. You don't have to go into JavaScript for this project. You might. You're welcome to, but I would say make sure you get the content first and then make it look good, and then deal with interaction. So don't, think of that as sort of a nice add-on if you feel like it, right? But it's definitely not required for this project. Okay, so very basic web page, obviously, but it's getting the job done, and that's what I expect you to do, something like this, right? So at least, content is where you should be next. Okay, so I am getting ready to wrap it up. I went a little over an hour, but I wanted to get to this part. I wanted to get to the images because that introduces both the image tag itself and also the way to deal with like uploading an image file into your subdomain's top level. So I hope that was helpful. Thanks for watching. I will be online and stuff throughout the day, so feel free to reach out on the troubleshooting channel or anywhere else, and I'd be happy to help you problem solve. I really enjoy actually troubleshooting and debugging HTML and CSS kind of stuff. So if you have that kind of problem, especially any problem, but especially those kinds of problems, then please reach out. It's not an inconvenience or a problem at all. It's like one of my favorite things to do. So please do that. All right. Okay, well, with that, I'm going to wrap things up. I'm going to switch the background music back on and switch to my signing off slide. This will be uploaded onto YouTube later this afternoon, and I'll go in and label all the different segments of it so you can jump to the specific parts if that's helpful. If you have any questions, I'll stick around online for a few minutes now, but then I'm going to go eat my lunch. So hope you all have a good day. Thanks for watching.